Hi, this is Anne from StraightGrain Patterns, and in this video I'll be showing you how to sew the Colette dungarees. Colette is a sewing pattern for kids between 3 and 14 years of age, and in this video I'll be showing you each step. I'll be showing you a little summary of the instructions and then carry them out for you. So let's start with step 1. This is simply reinforcing the front facing and one of the two button markings on each strap and zigzagging or serging a few edges. So this is the front facing. We are reinforcing it in its entirety, and on the straps here we'll be reinforcing one of the two button markings. Which one doesn't really matter. This is the bottom edge of the front facing, and the back facing will be serging or zigzagging it, and we'll also be serging or zigzagging the center edge of the four big panels. So this is the front panel with the armhole right here, and we'll be serging or zigzagging this center front edge, not the leg. Step 2 is pinning the front panels with right sides together, stitching the front edge, pressing the seam open, and then repeating that same process for the back panel. So this is one of those back panel pieces. We'll be pinning the two with right sides together, and then we'll be stitching that center back edge, and we'll do that with a 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. That's the default seam allowance we'll be using for this pattern. So if I don't mention the seam allowance, it means you'll have to stitch with 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch. Step 3 is pinning the inseam pocket pieces to the front and the back panels, all 4 of them. So this is how we attach them to the front piece. So as you can see, we're lining the top edge of each pocket piece up with the marking, and then sewing that side edge and also overlocking the edge. So we're using a 7 millimeter or 1/4 of an inch seam allowance here. And as you can see, I've also pressed the pocket pieces to the outside away from the garment and top stitch them on top of the seam allowance. So when you've attached all 4 of them, we'll move on to the pocket pieces: chest pocket, front pockets, and back pockets. The method is always the same. We'll be pressing the side edges and bottom edges to the wrong side of the garment by 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch. So we'll get this. And the top will then press under twice, 1.5 centimeter or 5/8 of an inch, and attaching it with a little stitch line. Same thing for the chest and the back pockets. Side and bottom edges pressed to the wrong side by 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch. Top edge pressed under twice by 1.5 centimeters or 5/8 of an inch, and attached with a little stitch line. And then we'll be attaching all the different pocket pieces to the front panel or the back panel. And as you can see, you can use a little triangle at each corner in order to make the edges a bit stronger. So as you can see, we'll be lining each pocket piece up with the top corners on the markings. So same here for the front pocket, chest pocket, I mean. So aligning the top corners with the markings, and then stitching the bottom and side edges. Then we'll be attaching the front and back panels with right sides together, like this, and then stitching around the outer edges 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Also, if you're not using the inseam pockets, you'll be stitching straight down there, and then you'll do the same for the inner seams, inner leg seams. Also, don't forget to serge or zigzag all these edges. And then it's time to prepare the straps. So we'll be folding each strap in half lengthwise, right sides together, so like this. Pinning everything in place. And then you'll be stitching along the long raw edge and one of the short raw edges, more specifically the one which has the button marking, if you're using a button, that is. And then you can just trim the corners. You can use sharp scissors here. You don't have to use blunt ones, in spite of what I seem to be demonstrating here. And then you just turn each strap with the right side out. You can use the handle of a spoon, or perhaps a thick knitting needle, or maybe some chopsticks, or whatever is near to push out that right side. So you'll be trying to pull out those edges, and then you'll give everything a good press so that each strap looks perfect and neat. The next step, step 8, is about pressing under the side facings. But before I explain step 8, I would like to show you what is the idea behind the next steps. So what I'm about to show you and explain to you right now, don't carry it out. Just watch and listen, and then we'll switch around the order. So this is the idea. We have a front side facing, we have a back side facing. We'll be stitching them together. So we'll create 2 of these side facings, and then we'll be attaching them to the garment. So don't carry this out right now. Just try to follow my line of reasoning. The idea is then to stitch the side facing to the armhole with the right sides together. Along the entire edge, of course. Just imagine that this pin right here is part of my stitch line, and then we'd be folding the side facing to the wrong side of the garment, and then pressing under that side, that edge. But of course, this is a very hard thing to do. So we're gonna start with pressing under that side edge. That's the first thing we'll do. So in step 8, you'll be using a little trick to do that, because of course these pieces are very curved. So we'll use a little trick to make it easier. So this is my trick. I put the 2 back facings with right sides together, and I put the 2 front facings with right sides together, and I put my stitch length to the maximum, or almost the maximum, and then I'll stitch along these outer edges right here, and then I'll get this, and then I can just press this seam allowance open with the tip of my iron, like this. As you can see, probably we're already pressing under that edge by a perfect centimeter. So we just have to remove the basting threads. And then we can see what happens. So this looks really nice and it was really easy to do. And then we'll be stitching a front and a back piece with right sides together, right? Very important here is that you mind those markings. The pattern indicated that where you had to put the markings. The idea is to put a back and a front side piece, side facing piece together with right sides together and with the markings on top of each other. It's very important. Give a little stitch line right here. 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch, of course, and then finger pressing that seam open, and then we should end up with 2 of these side facings. Next, we'll be attaching them to the armhole in the garment, right sides together. Very important here is not to stretch the side facings. As you can see, the side facings are shorter than the armhole. That's intended. Don't stretch them out to make them fit. This is a side seam with the side pocket. Let's just check whether I'm using the right side facing. I'm just putting them with the side seams on top of each other, and then this is the longer and it should be on the front of the garment, but it's not, so I have to switch things up. The longest end of the side facing should be on the front panel of the garment. So side seams on top of each other, and then just pinning the whole thing together, minding not to stretch, right? Just put the two layers together without stretching either of them. And stitch all along the edge with a 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then step 11, attaching the straps to the back. Very important here is where the 2 straps cross. I'll be showing you why that's important in a minute. So this is our back piece with the side facings, and we'll be putting the straps on top of the back like this on the right side, and then give a little stitch line at 7 millimeters or 1/4 of an inch from the edge. And now I'll be showing you where to put those straps, because they have to be apart a bit at the top. Intuitively, you would think to put them this way to make them touch right at the top, but then when you attach the back facing at 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch and you turn everything right side out, the straps will be overlapping, and that's not the idea. We don't want the straps to overlap. So instead, put them apart a bit, and more specifically, they should cross at 1 centimeter away from the top edge. So like this. And then attach them. And then you'll be pressing the bottom edge of the front facing and the back facing 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch to the wrong side and stitching right near the raw edge. So this is the back facing, folding 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch to the wrong side and attaching near the raw edge. And the same goes for the front facing. And then we'll be attaching that back facing to the back of the garment. This is probably the most difficult step to explain in the instructions, but when I show it in the video, I hope it'll be clear. So this is our back. We'll be putting the back facing with right sides together. And at the top, pinning is easy, of course, and straightforward. Everything fits well together. But then we have the side facing right here. The idea is to fold it away from the garment and then to pin the back facing on top of it, because you'll have a little overlap. And important here is that as you stitch everything together, that your stitch line goes right into the underlying seam of the side facing right here. So your stitch line will go this way into the underlying seam, that way across the top. And then at the right side, or right hand side, you'll have the same issue. Fold the side facing outward, put the back facing on top, and make sure your stitch line here ends into that underlying seam of the side facing. For the front facing, you'll use the exact same method. The only difference here is that you won't have those straps in between, of course. So front facing on top of the front, right sides together, side facing folded outward, and then making sure your seam ends into the underlying seam of the side facing. Step 15, trimming some corners, turning the facings to the wrong side of the garment. We'll start by trimming, cutting away some bulk, this time using sharp scissors. And of course, I chose to show the back right here because you have to do the same thing at the front, but I'm showing you the back because I can brag about how neat my straps are looking. Lower, 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 even lower. Yeah, perfect. As you can see, the straps are not overlapping. They're just touching each other. That's perfect. And then we'll be putting everything where it should be, turning the side facings to the wrong side of the garment, giving everything a nice little press. And then, of course, we'll start stitching. We'll start here, go all the way around. Of course, always stitching at the near the edge, near the folded edge. When we're at the top, we don't have to do this edge. You can also leave this as it is, but if you do, use a 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then you'll do the same thing at the other side arm opening. And then we're at the final step, step 16, making some buttonholes, sewing on some buttons, and finishing the hems of the dungarees. So we'll start with the buttonhole. We'll have 2 markings here, and each buttonhole starts from the marking down. So straight down. And then we'll sew a button on the front of each of the straps. So right here, except of course, if we're using the knots, then we'll just put a knot in each of the straps. And that just leaves us with the hems. So we'll be pressing each hem 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch to the wrong side twice, giving it a good press, and then stitching along the fold all the way around, and then we'll be turning the legs right side out. And then we'll just press or fold the hems to the outside twice for a casual look. So 3.5 centimeters or 1 inch and 3/8 of an inch to the outside. Unless, of course, if you don't like to see that seam allowance on the outside, then you can switch things up. You just fold it to the inside of the leg first, also by 3.5 centimeters or 1 inch and 3/8 of an inch, like this. Give everything a good press, and then you won't see those side seams, or seam allowances, I should say. So your Colette dungarees are finished. If you'd like to find out more about the pattern, visit straightgrain.com/shop. Thanks for watching.